All right, everybody, welcome back to the Logical Gamer Show. We have a lot to cover today, and not our normal podcast, but a lot of stuff happening that I wanted to cover. And we need to discuss what is happening with Concord, as well as what's going on with the games industry as a result of Concord, and what gamers are doing that we have to stop doing, what studios are doing that we have to stop doing, and everybody's kind of working off each other, and nobody's really getting to the root cause here. Now, what we really need to do is to get into Concord as a whole. Now, that game was in development for over 8 years by Sony, another hero shooter, just got shut down. The game wasn't even out fucking 2 weeks. It's already been shut down. If you have a physical copy of it, hold on to it. It's going to be worth a shitload of money in the future. But what people don't realize, it's not... There's a lot of reasons that got Concord canceled. It's not just one thing. Yes, the biggest reason is the woke bullshit. The developers listened to none of our feedback to the people that played it. They didn't care about our hatred or despise towards the character designs, how they were just generic, they weren't good. After all, in the betas that they had, they didn't listen to any of it. The developer itself came out and said that she hated white people and they don't want white people to play her game, specifically straight white males, all that same old nonsense. So of course, considering straight white males make up the majority of gamers, that the game was shit. It didn't sell. It was out less than 2 weeks before Sony decided to pull the plug on 8 years of development and hundreds of millions of dollars down the drain. Now, what else was there? Yes, it was in an oversaturated market of hero shooters. It was in... didn't really have a special hook as far as the gameplay. It did have its own hook with the little vignettes and little videos that it will put out to continue the story. That's something new. That's something a hero shooter didn't have. Almost along the lines of what Defiance did when that came out, where it had the TV show that tied into the progression of the game and vice versa in between episodes. That was cool. Or at least it did have solid gameplay. Concord. The hitboxes were good. The movement was good. Nobody really had any complaints with the gameplay itself. But outside of the wokeness factor and the fact that the developers hated an overwhelming majority of the people that played it by their own words, what else was it? Outside of being the oversaturated market. Now, there's a lot of things that the developer did and the studios did, but a lot of it is what we have to figure out we do ourselves as gamers. Now, we do a lot of this, which I'll get into, but we really have to cover what the studios do first. The studios spent 8 years making this game. Hundreds of millions of dollars. It's down the fucking drain. It's gone. And for what reason? To make another hero shooter with a couple of vignettes on it? No one cares about that. Nothing really stood out on it. And the reason it took so long is because they know it's what gamers have been complaining about. Now, be honest with yourself here, because if you're not, we're not going to get really to the bottom of it, and we're going to get stuck with the same problems over and over again of every other week you hear about another studio or 2 or 3 or 7 that are getting laid off or layoffs or shut down or people getting fired or merged because of poor game sales. Now, everybody wants huge games and hundreds of hours of gameplay and DLCs and characters and top-of-the-line graphics. Now, of course, you could have all that, but technology costs so much now for game development to make. And every time you want a game that has all these things, it's going to take a lot of time. And when you take a lot of time, you spend a lot of money. Whether it's 4, 5, 6, 8 years like Concord had, and they had 400 people or 450 people on the studio, yeah, they should have had a lot of content. It spent almost a decade making this for a hero shooter. That's fucking ridiculous. The Witcher 3 took less time than that, even with all their DLCs. But think about it. Where we screw ourselves as gamers is we put the developers in this position where everything has to be fucking perfect. We have to have hundreds of hours of content, top-notch graphics, 4K, 60 frames per second, which doesn't make a difference compared to 30 in most games, depending on the concept of gaming. And depending on the concept of what type of game it is, excuse me. And when you do all that, that costs the developer a lot of money. And then when it takes long, you complain that it takes long. Well, a lot of these developers don't have the money at their backing to make a studio hundreds of hours long, top quality graphics and everything, soup to nuts on Cloud 9 that you're going to want in 2 years. Unless they have 600-700 people on their roster, that they're not going to have the ability to do that. And when it does take longer, you complain that it's taking longer, and then we don't want to buy the game to show the support. If it takes fast and they get us out what they want, there's bound to be bugs in it. Then we complain that there's bugs in it, and the game gets crapped all on, and nobody buys it, and the studio fails. And if it wasn't because of us and the restrictions we're kind of like subconsciously putting on these developers, we would never be in this position. We're putting ourselves in this position to get pissed off about games because the developers are doing what we want. Now, Concord, I admit, that's a separate animal. That's totally different. It's a separate animal. There was a lot of other things going on. But look at Redfall. Redfall got crapped all over because it's an Xbox game. When it happens with Sony, with any of their games, with Concord, it's the system's fault. It's not Sony's fault. But when Xbox happens with Redfall, Xbox is dead. They should never make another game again. And yes, there is an Xbox tax. I'm not even going to dispute that. The examples of that have been proven soup to nuts, 7 different ways a week and 10 times on Sunday. But we have to stop putting developers in this position. What would you rather want? A hundreds-hour game? To be honest, unless it's awesome in every way, I get bored and I don't finish it. So it's pointless to me. Then what we do is we complain about it. And if not, we don't play the game at all, or we complain that it's too short and we should have gotten more because it took so long. We're never happy, and we do it to ourselves. So why don't we start supporting the indie games that are less, or even a AA game? What's wrong with a 15 to 20, maybe 30-hour game? Even Assassin's Creed Mirage. It took me 30 hours to get everything done in the game. And even if you don't want to do anything, if you're not a completionist, it still takes you, I think it was like 20 to do everything in the game. Why can't we get back to that? Games take a couple years. We get the graphics that we want, a good story, even if we trade off a little bit for other. What's the difference? Like, why do we have to have everything the way we want it and we need it 20 minutes ago? We have to remember, we're not the ones making these games. We're the ones telling the developers with our complaints or criticisms or praises that these are the games we want. And then when they make us these games and we complain about it, they look like, what the fuck's going on? They can't please... Forget about you can't please everybody. They can't please anybody when it comes to gamers a lot of the times. And it pisses me off because I'm 45 years old. I've been playing games for 38 years since I was 39 years since I was 6 years old. The original Atari was my first fucking game. So I know a little bit about graphics compared to Atari to now. But I play everything. I own every system, every console. I have a PC. It doesn't matter. I like every game. Why does it have to be, well, if it's not 60 frames per second, I'm not playing it? Why? Does a puzzle strategy game need to be 60 frames per second? The only games that need to be 60 frames per second are shooters. Even action-adventure games or slow walking simulators, you don't need 60 frames per second. 30's fine. Starfield first came out, it was 30 frames a second. It was fine. Of course, it came out later, but it doesn't matter. Avowed is going to be 30 frames per second. That's fine. It's a slow role-playing game. There's no fast movement. You don't need all those extra things. So why are we crapping on games when we're getting what we want? And if the one thing is just a little bit off, whether it's the graphics or the story or even something small and development-wise, like I mentioned with Avowed and Starfield with the frames per second, who gives a shit, guys? Why can't we just get back to appreciating the games for what they are? Not every game is going to be a 100-hour marathon like The Witcher 3 or Assassin's Creed Valhalla. A lot of games are going to be like Max and the Curse of Brotherhood when they're 3 hours long. And that was an awesome game. A lot of games might be slow walking simulators like Life is Strange, which to this day, to me, is the best game ever created, bar none, the original Life is Strange. That was awesome. What about the games for change category now that we see at the Game Awards all the time? Ubisoft has two of the best games in that category I've ever played, with Valiant Hearts and Child of Light. The story in that game is amazing. The music is amazing. The animation with the 2D art drawing and the hand drawing in the background in both of them, it is absolutely incredible. The way Valiant Hearts conveyed a story with almost no words and just grunts as sounds was one of the most emotional endings I've ever seen in a game. But why? Because it's not 100 hours long and no one gives a shit anymore? Because it only costs $15 to buy? $7 if it's on sale? No one cares anymore? To be honest, a lot of the problems, admittedly, obviously, are the developers, since they're the ones that make the games. They clearly can't be held not responsible. And they own a majority of the onus on this problem, since they're the one that makes the games. They have final say. If they think they know better, they can make a game whatever they want. But if they think they know better and make what we wanted because we said we wanted, then that's on them. They're the ones that make the games. They know better. So why can't we just trust them a little bit and go with the games we like? We can play anything. I mean, tell me what you think below, down in the comments. We can play anything, we can like everything, but everything nowadays has to be 60 frames per second, 4K graphics, 100-hour content, or I'm not touching it. Why? Who gives a fuck? What's the difference? It makes no sense, and to this day, I still don't have any logical reason from anyone for this, other than, well, I just want it. Okay, that's great if you want it, and when those games come out, you could play it. But it doesn't make the other games any better or any worse. Look at Ori and the Blind Forest, getting 9s and 10s all over the place. I didn't like it, really, but everybody else seemed to like it. That's great. It got great reviews. The Inside game came out. I thought it was so overrated. It was okay, but it was really overrated. Got 9s all over the place. Witcher 3, I loved. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, one of my favorite Assassin's Creed. I liked it. A lot of people don't because they like the more linear, more stealth-based. That's great. Everybody likes something different. But the shit all over developers all the time, it's getting out of control. And I'm not even talking about the woke nonsense about games. That's a totally different bullshit. The fact that if a game is woke, it can't be, successful is bullshit to the point where that's not even the definition of the word anymore. The definition of the word is not about being, if the game's woke, it can't be successful. If it's a game's preachy as fuck woke and saying you're an asshole unless you do this, then the game's not going to be successful. That's what happened to Concord. Life is Strange is my favorite game ever made, and that's probably one of the wokest shits ever. So it all depends on how the story is portrayed. When you tell someone this is what they have to do, it's not going to be good. So when a developer says, this is the game you have to play, this is the way you have to be when you play a game, it's not going to be good. Makes total sense, right? Because you're just going to get pissed off and you're going to say, fuck you, who are you? I can play what I want. The same thing goes the opposite way, guys. When we say your game isn't going to be good unless you make it like this, who the fuck are you? We don't make games. Maybe you do make games, and maybe you listen to this, and maybe you play games, and maybe it's both ways. But it goes the same way. If a developer can't tell you that you have to play a game this way or like these characters or else you're an asshole, it's the same thing from us saying that if a developer doesn't make the game we want or it's not like this, you suck at games or your game deserves to fail. It's the same exact thing. You're now creating the problem that you're mad that the developers are doing according to you. So now you're in the same boat. You're causing the problem that you're mad about. If this is the case, guys, games industries, we're going to have no studios left. If we keep bugging out about games not being long and doing everything, we got to respect the games for the differences of what they are. Again, let me know what you think down below. Send us a comment. Say Mike or Joe, whatever you guys want to comment on. Follow us on our X channel as well, on Logical Gamer Show. But we're going to get into a bigger podcast, Joe and I, about this. But I wanted to really get this out there to everybody before it kind of like falters off. Because you know as well as I do, the servers are going to go offline. Astrobot comes out tomorrow. Space Hammer Marine 2 comes out. And we're going to forget about it. It'll be a topic, obviously, because it's a game that's been canceled 2 weeks after $800 million of development or some shit. But it's not going to be as covered. You know as well as I do. The next thing comes out, it goes done. So I really wanted to get this out. But remember, guys, we're the ones that play the games. They're the ones that make the games. There has to be a happy medium and a relationship here between us and the developers. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen. People are going to stop making games, and then gamers are going to blame them for not making games. Developers are going to blame us and say, fuck you, we made games, you don't want us to do it, you just gave a shit about it all the time. So you can't crap all over everything and say, I have no food to eat, if you shit all over your food. Same thing. I don't know how else to put it. Again, it seems logical to me. That's why I'm saying it. Again, 9 times out of 10, I'm right. Probably more than that. 99 times out of 100, I'm right. Because I make sure I look at all the information beforehand before I make a decision. It's unfortunately what has become a unique ability nowadays because everyone just tries to react emotionally and never want to admit they're wrong. But, again, it's also not bragging because it's not right because I say it because it's right. And if you think I'm wrong to say that gamers can make whatever game they want, okay. Well, that's not true. If you think I'm wrong that say gamers can decide to play whatever game they want, okay. Then you're wrong because that's not true. But we each have to respect the other person. When a developer says, if you play this game like Concord, you're a straight white male, you shouldn't be playing this game, fuck you. That's stupid. Don't tell me what I should and shouldn't play. Everybody's different. Not every person of every race, of every gender, of every culture is the same. It's not even a race thing. It's a culture thing. Everybody's different. It's a sex thing. Everybody's different. Gender thing. Males, females, everybody's different. Every gamer's different. Get developers in the same studio. Some like the game, some don't that they make. You see them complain about it all the time. So, long story short, gamers, keep your mouth shut. Quit fucking around with developers. And again, I'm not putting developers off the hook here. My statements on developers have long been done. But sitting here in my kitchen office today wanting to get this out here because it's not just the developers. We're part of the problem too. Granted, a much smaller portion of the problem, but we're still a portion of it. And the more we keep going, the bigger the problem we're going to be. And the bigger problem the gamers become, the bigger problem the overall situation becomes, because the more a problem we become, the less of a problem developers come. And they're not going to make games we want. They're going to stop making games, and everything's going to start falling apart. So in other words, keep your fucking mouth shut unless the situation merits it. That's basically it. Hope you follow us here at the Logical Gamer Show because this is the type of news we bring you. Hard-hitting, it doesn't matter. I don't give a shit what you say. I don't give a shit what you think. You want to have a discussion with me, we'll do it. But that's about it. Next thing you want to get on the live show, we are also going to start getting guests on our live shows. You want to start? We're going to have a special thing. We're going to have viewers, subscribers on our show to talk about with us the topics in real time that we're talking about. Joe and I working it out now. Trying to get the schedule down to different topics. We're going to get those topics out on our X channels, what we want to talk about. And if you want, once we do that, just respond to that tweet on X that we get and in our DMs. So you want to jump on the show, we'll work everything out with you, and we'll try to get you on those things. Until next time, keep your mouth shut. Who cares what developers say? They're not you. They're not going to care what you think. You don't care what they think. Just don't play the game. Or play the game whatever you want. Play what you want. Don't play what you want. Who cares? Till next time on the Logical Gamer Show, tune in here. Keep it like and subscribe down below.